Today, let's talk about a suspense thriller, The Game, starring the veteran actor Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. The last 5 minutes of the film are so astonishing that they make you want to applaud. Nick, a successful stockbroker with a fortune, wakes up every morning in his luxurious mansion, dresses in expensive suits, enjoys a nutritious breakfast prepared by his housekeeper, and then drives his luxury car to work to discuss high-stakes business with his partners. His secretary informs him that a man named Conrad, his unfortunate younger brother, wants to invite him to dinner. The lunch is set at the restaurant Nick often visits. When the time comes, Conrad makes a dazzling appearance. Today is Nick's birthday, and he's come to celebrate for his older brother. Compared to his brother's carefree attitude, Nick appears rigid and dull. Perhaps that's why his last marriage ended in failure. Conrad gives his brother a birthday gift, an invitation to the consumer entertainment service. He promises it will bring endless fun to Nick's life because he has experienced it himself. As a brother, he can't keep such a great thing to himself. Under Conrad's strong insistence, Nick agrees to give it a try. Then he's surprised with a birthday song choir. After the housekeeper leaves, Nick spends a birthday celebrating by himself. His ex-wife calls and tells him that she has remarried a doctor who is gentle and considerate, and they have a child together. His ex-wife has moved on to a new life, leaving him seemingly stuck in place. The conversation ends abruptly. Hanging up the phone and looking around the empty surroundings, Nick takes out the invitation from his pocket. He recalls an old story. Many years ago, his 48-year-old father jumped to his death without any warning. He used to not understand why, but now he seems to understand a bit. The next day, Nick arrives at the address on the Consumer Entertainment Service invitation. It seems to be a company with people coming and going and messy decorations. Charles, the deputy director of the Data Analysis Engineering Department, is responsible for guiding him. He asks Nick to fill out a membership application form, complete 2 psychological tests, and a financial questionnaire. They will tailor a game for each member according to their situation, ensuring it's unforgettable. Charles says their company can provide what is lacking in customers' lives. Nick feels this is a waste of time because he lacks nothing. Charles then advises Nick to fill out the form today, and when the game comes to him one day, he can decide whether to participate or not, and he can quit at any time. It sounds tempting. Nick takes the application form and psychological test questionnaire, and goes through a physical examination, spending the whole day to get everything done. However, Nick has not been able to figure out what the consumer entertainment service is. Until one day, he overheard a conversation at his regular club. They said the consumer entertainment service originated in San Francisco and has a long history. He treated them to a drink, hoping to learn more about the consumer entertainment service. However, when they heard his question, they just smiled at each other and didn't speak, only saying it was an unforgettable experience. Such high praise? Nick became a bit interested. Accidents always come suddenly. One day, while he was in a meeting with his subordinates, a phone call came in. A female voice on the other end told him that they couldn't admit him as a member, and then hung up. This was not what he had imagined. After work, Nick called Conrad to ask what was going on, but he was out of touch again. When he drove home, Nick was surprised to find a clown doll at his doorstep. He carried the clown into the house and found a key in its mouth, marked with the Consumer Entertainment Service. Listening to the financial news before going to bed is Nick's habit, but today he has a companion. While Nick was seriously studying the strange clown, the host on TV suddenly spoke to him. The host on the screen was talking to the shocked Nick, saying this was his game, and he was here to explain the rules. The first key you have received, others will follow. Pay attention to all the small details in your life, and you will use them when you need to. Nick was shocked, and now he just wants to know how the Consumer Entertainment Service did it. Reminded by the host, Nick found a camera hidden in the clown's eyes. He twisted the clown's neck, and the host appeared again, giving him another phone number, saying it could only be used in emergencies. Then this sudden and inexplicable conversation ended. The next day, Nick went to work as usual, but after last night's events, he felt that all kinds of people around him had become NPCs in the game. Especially the man sitting opposite him, with a hesitant look in his eyes, made Nick immediately wake up and prepare for the next task. But the next second, he found out it was just a leak of ink from the pin on his chest. Nick went to the bathroom to clean up the mark, but met a man in urgent need of toilet paper. The man asked Nick for help, but he walked away without looking back. Nick's plan for today was to go to his work partner Andrew and ask him to retire because he didn't complete the scheduled work tasks. Even though Andrew and Nick's father were friends, he still didn't give any face to this elder and insisted on firing him. But the box with the dissolution agreement couldn't be opened. Nick could only take out the key, remembering last night's experience, and tried to use the key given to him by the consumer entertainment service to unlock it, but it still couldn't be opened. Nick picked up the box and left. In the evening, he went to his regular restaurant for dinner and unexpectedly bumped into a clumsy waitress, ruining his shirt. What a bad day. Although the waitress named Emily sincerely apologized and made up for it, Nick still refused to forgive her. The manager who heard the news came and directly fired Emily on the spot. Nick moved to another table to have dinner, and a waiter suddenly put a bill on his side and left in a hurry. Nick picked up the bill and chased after Emily to ask if she had anything to give him. Emily left a sentence, "Get away from me," and left quickly. Suddenly, a pedestrian fell to the ground without any warning, and Nick walked over curiously. At this time, Emily came back and told Nick to quickly ask for help. This passerby seems to be in a bad condition. Nick could only rush into the street to stop the police, and the ambulance came quickly. The police asked Nick to fill out a form and said they would take him and Emily to the hospital together. Nick was very speechless, and the bill only had one sentence: "Don't let her go." So he chased out and got involved in this matter. The ambulance rushed to the hospital, and as soon as the two got off the car, the lights in the underground parking lot went out. The busy medical staff just ran away. Faced with the puzzled Emily, Nick had to explain the consumer entertainment service and his game. This time it was Emily's turn to be speechless. She didn't want to get involved in this matter. She chose a direction at will and walked, and not far away, an elevator slowly opened, and Emily and Nick got into the elevator together, but pressing the floor number didn't work. Nick finally remembered the key given to him by the consumer entertainment service, and this time it was right. The elevator ran for a few seconds, then suddenly made a loud noise and broke down, and the two had to climb out from the top of the elevator. Nick took the lead, Emily followed, and after successfully escaping, Nick found that he had forgotten his briefcase in the elevator. It seems that he can only come back to get it tomorrow. The ambulance didn't take them to the hospital at all, but took them to the consumer entertainment service. While looking for the way in the dark, the two accidentally touched the security alarm. If the security guard came, it would be hard to explain. So they hurriedly ran out of the building, turned into an alley, and the guards chased after them, releasing several vicious dogs. Nick and Emily climbed ladders and walls all the way, and finally got rid of the dogs. But soon they found themselves trapped on the top floor of a Chinese restaurant, and they couldn't get down, so they jumped down directly, using the trash can as a cushion, and both escaped safely. After a night of adventure, the relationship between Nick and Emily has become much closer. He took Emily to his office to clean up. After cleaning up, Nick called a taxi for Emily to go home. Before leaving, Emily admitted to Nick that someone had paid her $400 to spill the drink on Nick, and she didn't forget to tease Nick, saying he was a handsome guy. The next day, Nick received 2 messages from the secretary. Andrew came and said he wanted to invite him to dinner, and the Japan hotel also called to say that Nick had lost his American Express card there. Nick opened his wallet and found that the American Express card was indeed gone. Nick came to the Japan hotel and got back the American Express card from the front desk clerk, but when he asked for the key again, the clerk said he had given it to him last night. Under the guidance of another clerk, Nick came to a room with pornographic photos everywhere, the TV playing pornographic images, and the table with a bill signed by him. At this time, a room service came from outside the room, and Nick was panicked. He quickly cleaned up the whole room, took away all the photos, and then drove away from the hotel. Then he found that someone was following him, and the guy had a gun. It was real. Faced with the pistol in Nick's hand, the tough guy immediately told the truth. He was a private detective. Someone sent him to monitor Nick. He turned around and ran away. The consumer entertainment service should not have gone so far, and Nick's first suspected object was Andrew. He came to the hotel where Andrew was staying with a lawyer and vented his anger. However, Andrew acted as if he knew nothing, saying that he agreed with Nick's proposal to retire and came to say goodbye to him today. This reversal came too quickly, and Nick embarrassedly apologized. Nick gave the lawyer a task to investigate what the consumer entertainment service was doing. He didn't want to play this game anymore. Nick took out the waiver given to him by the consumer entertainment service when he joined, only to find that it was just a blank paper. He was fooled. In addition, there was a second key in the briefcase with the waiver. In the evening, Nick returned home. The house was dark, and the phone couldn't make calls. Nick took out his pistol for self-defense, and in the dark, he didn't know what mechanism he triggered, and the whole house suddenly emitted a strange blue light. Someone had graffitied all over his house with fluorescent powder, drawing a mess. Nick came to the bedroom and found a letter in the clown's mouth. "Like my father, I choose to sleep forever," with a photo of his father jumping to his death. No matter what, this joke is too much. Nick took out the phone and called the police. At this moment, the the long-lost brother Conrad suddenly appeared, his face full of fear, and asked his brother to talk in the car. It turns out that he was also badly treated by the Consumer Entertainment Service, which was different from his calm brother, and Conrad was already crazy. Even the car tire blowout, he insisted that it was done by the Consumer Entertainment Service. In the car's glove box, Conrad found a bunch of keys from the Consumer Entertainment Service, and the young man went crazy instantly, saying that Nick and the Consumer Entertainment Service were also in the same group. The two brothers had a fierce argument on the street, and after throwing a sentence, "I don't want your help," Conrad ran away without a trace. At this moment, the phone booth on the side of the road suddenly rang loudly, and it was the fierce argument between him and his brother. Needless to say, this is another trick of the Consumer Entertainment Service. Nick called a taxi to go home, but this taxi was also arranged by the Consumer Entertainment Service, which took Nick on a speed and passion ride, and finally took him to the river. The driver jumped out of the car in advance and ran away, and Nick sank into the river with the car. In a panic, Nick touched the car lock on the taxi, and he quickly took out the second key given to him by the Consumer Entertainment Service from his arms, opened the car window, and escaped from the car. The prank game instantly escalated to intentional homicide, and Nick called the police. But when he arrived at the building of the Consumer Entertainment Service with a large group of police officers, the place was already empty. The police then investigated and found that there was no rental in this building, and the government did not have any Consumer Entertainment Service or any related company registered. The taxi needs time to salvage, and the paint used for graffiti at home also needs time to investigate. In short, there is no clue, and the police can't do anything about this case. That night, when he returned home, Nick suddenly asked the housekeeper what kind of person his father was. The housekeeper said that Nick's father was a very quiet person, but no one could have thought that he would choose such a path. Nick is very similar to his father. After dinner, Nick went to find Emily. Maybe she is the only person who can answer his doubts now. Nick showed Emily the pornographic photos he found in the hotel, and he remembered that Emily also wore red underwear. So he suspected that the woman in the photo was her. Seeing Nick's lost look, Emily offered to talk to him, but she needed to change her clothes first. Sitting on the sofa, Nick found that there was something wrong with the house. The lampshade had not yet been removed, the tap couldn't produce water, the refrigerator was empty, the books in the bookcase were all fake, and even the photos in the photo frame were cut from the newspaper. Emily could only admit in a low voice that someone was monitoring them through the smoke detector, and it must be the Consumer Entertainment Service's handiwork. To avoid exposing more, Emily had to destroy that smoke detector. A group of fully armed Consumer Entertainment Service staff came out of a van one after another, holding submachine guns and shooting at Emily's house. This place is no longer suitable for staying. Emily and Nick fled in a hurry, climbed over the fence and hid in the car, barely escaping the pursuit of the Consumer Entertainment Service. After confirming that it was temporarily safe, Emily told Nick the truth. It turned out that Conrad and the Consumer Entertainment Service were in cahoots, and he didn't mean to. Conrad thought that by involving Nick, he could get out of it, but he didn't expect to make his brother miserable. Emily asked Nick to check his account quickly. On the night in his office, she stole his dedicated line and data machine number, so the Consumer Entertainment Service could hack into his computer. As for other personal information, Nick told them all when he took the psychological test. They could calculate his password based on these things. Nick took out his phone and checked his account doubtfully, and was surprised to find that all his accounts were empty. Nick then quickly called his most trusted personal lawyer and informed him of his current situation. Then Nick took Emily to a cabin, which was his private area. The lawyer called back and said that she had checked all of Nick's accounts, and there was no money missing. She said the lawyer must also be in cahoots, and she didn't expect even the lawyer to betray her. Nick quickly hung up the phone and planned to move, but at this moment, he suddenly felt dizzy, and he realized that he had been tricked again. Someone had put something in the coffee. Nick heard Emily say to him that the calls he made to the banks in the United States, France, and Switzerland had all been eavesdropped on by the Consumer Entertainment Service, and it was he who leaked the account number and password. Everything was done. Now she wants to quit. Nick didn't know how long he had been asleep, but he woke up in a coffin, buried in a cemetery, not even in the United States. He had become a penniless vagrant. Nick went to the American embassy to ask for help, but without money, ID card, or passport, the American embassy couldn't help him. However, they gave him an idea to pawn the watch his mother gave him on his wrist. However, the money was not enough for him to return to the country, and Nick had to put down his face, hitchhike, and even go to the cafe to ask for help. In the end, he returned to San Francisco in a cargo truck, and his life had undergone earth-shaking changes. There was no one at home, and he found some change in a jar. Then he went to find his brother, but at this time, Conrad had already gone crazy and was taken to a mental hospital, and the consumer entertainment service had completely driven him crazy. He could only go to his ex-wife for help, and he borrowed a car from his ex-wife and asked her not to tell anyone his whereabouts no matter who called her, and his nervous appearance scared his ex-wife. Nick finally realized how bad he was before, and he sincerely apologized to his ex-wife and asked for her forgiveness. At this time, the familiar voice came from the TV in the restaurant, and the actor in the advertisement was Mr. Charles, who had received him at the consumer entertainment service. In a Chinese restaurant called the New Moon Restaurant, Nick finally found Mr. Charles. Mr. Charles told Nick that he was just an actor and just followed orders. Nick forced Mr. Charles to take him to the person in charge with a gun, and Mr. Charles had no choice but to comply. The two came to the building where the consumer entertainment service was located, and under Mr. Charles's cover, Nick held a security guard and successfully sneaked into the building by elevator. In the cafeteria of the consumer entertainment service, Nick saw Emily again, and he also saw many familiar faces here, the private detective who was following him, and the two men who were promoting the consumer entertainment service to him. All of this was a scam from beginning to end. Nick held Emily hostage and fled to the rooftop. In the melee, Mr. Charles was unfortunately shot and died. Before the security guards could catch up, Nick pointed his gun at Emily and forced her to tell him who was behind it. Looking at the gun in Nick's hand, Emily was confused. How could Nick still have a gun? He is now a poor man. Emily frantically explained that this was just his game, and the game was not over yet. The bullets were all blanks, and Mr. Charles was not dead yet, and Conrad was waiting for him to celebrate his birthday together. But now whatever she said, Nick didn't believe it. The electric saw cut the door lock and sparks flew, and Nick's nerves were also extremely tense. The door to the rooftop was knocked open, and Nick fired a shot. Conrad, who was holding champagne behind the door, fell to the ground and died. Seeing this tragic scene, Mr. Charles was shocked, and he blamed Emily for letting the situation get out of control. Emily cried and said that she had explained, but Nick didn't listen. Nick was disheartened, and he ran towards the edge of the rooftop, choosing the same path as his father. But the impact he imagined did not come, and he fell on a safety airbag, unharmed. A few people pulled him out of the safety airbag, and then he saw his brother coming out from behind the scenes. It turned out that this was another game, a birthday gift from Conrad. Nick hugged his brother who had been regained and was overjoyed. This may be the most thrilling birthday he has ever had in his life. Nick reconciled with everyone he knew, including his ex-wife and Andrew. Of course, he didn't forget Emily, the woman who had made him die and come back to life, and he was very interested in her. How about the two of them having a cup of coffee together now? The Game is not so much a suspense film as it is a healing film with a touch of suspense. The protagonist of the film, Nick, is undoubtedly a successful person from the perspective of the outside world, with a lot of money and power. However, only he knows that his life is lonely, and boring. The film begins with a video memory, which seems to imply that Nick may follow the same path as his father. To avoid this tragedy, his brother Conrad started his prank plan. The brilliance of the director lies in the fact that after the disaster, Nick couldn't accept it and chose to jump off the building, but his ending was still within the plan of the consumer entertainment service. Afterwards, Mr. Charles also said that if Nick didn't jump, he would have to find a way to throw him down. It turns out that Conrad was very clear about his brother, and it was his careful planning that made Nick realize the true meaning of life and the beauty of life, and take a new step. The reason why The Game has a high score is not only because of the delicate performances of the actors and the twists and turns of the story, but also because it gives the audience outside the screen profound thinking. Power, identity, status, money. Apart from these external things, why did Nick's father choose to go on a one-way street? Can material abundance really make up for spiritual deficiency? There is such a sentence in the film, which should be the finishing touch. I was blind before, but now I can see. I believe that when we settle down and watch the whole film carefully, we will be able to appreciate the profound meaning of this sentence.